If you love ghost stories, folklore, and all things mysterious, you need to make a trip to Haunted in downtown Tullahoma, Tennessee. Just a short drive from Nashville, this family-owned Gothic shop is filled with the strange, unusual, and downright fascinating. This isn't a big box store full of mass-produced decorations. Haunted specializes in handmade curiosities, Gothic decor, metaphysical supplies, green witchcraft essentials, and unique pieces created by independent artists. Whether you're decorating or just looking for something you won't find anywhere else, Haunted is worth the trip. Visit them on 125 West Lincoln Street in Tullahoma, or shop online at hauntedstore.net. That's right, hauntedstore.net. Haunted, curated for the strange and unusual. Welcome back to Southern Ghost Stories, where we explore the haunted history, folklore, and legends in the United States. I'm your host, the American Haunt Historian, Alan Searcy. Today we're heading to Savannah, Georgia, to talk about one of the most gruesome true crimes ever in the history of not just Savannah, but the entire state of Georgia. Savannah, Georgia has always had a strange relationship with death. Long before ghost tours rolled through the historic district, before tourists packed River Street carrying plastic cups of beer beneath hanging Spanish moss, Savannah built its reputation on tragedy, disease, violence, and the supernatural. It is a city where cemeteries sit in the middle of neighborhoods like forgotten islands from another century. A place where old mansions still carry the stories of yellow fever epidemics, Civil War hospitals, murders, suicides, and even executions. Even people who don't believe in ghosts will often admit Savannah feels quite different. It feels dark after the sun goes down. The city almost seems suspended in time. And unlike many haunted cities that market legends built mostly on folklore, Savannah's haunted reputation often comes directly from documented suffering. Thousands died during outbreaks of disease in the 1800s. Fires repeatedly devastated entire sections of the city. Slaves were brutalized for generations. Duels occurred out in public squares. Bodies floated into the harbor. Executions were attended like public entertainment. Death was not hidden away in Savannah. It was right there alongside everyone, alongside everything. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, locals already whispered about spirits appearing in alleyways and windows. Stories spread about wandering apparitions near Colonial Park Cemetery, shadow figures inside old boarding houses, and phantom voices drifting through homes built atop unmarked graves. But among all of Savannah's ghost stories and violent history, one case rose above nearly all the others. Not just because of the brutality, not just because of the mystery, but because the murders at the Gribble House became something far more disturbing than a normal homicide investigation. It became a case involving lynch mobs, psychological torture, fake ghosts, wax corpses, deathbed accusations, and rumors that innocent people may have gone to prison while the real killer, he just up and vanished into history. Even today, more than a century later, many people still consider the Gribble House murders one of the grisliest crimes not only in Savannah history, but in all of Georgia. The story began quietly, though. In the mid-1800s, Eliza and Robert Gribble immigrated from England to Savannah and settled in an area known as Frogtown, on the outskirts of the city. Frogtown wasn't glamorous. It was a rough, working-class section of Savannah, filled with modest homes, muddy roads, laborers, and boarding houses. The Gribbles, they built a simple home there and raised 3 children. After Robert died, Eliza Gribble, she was left a widow. And like many women of the era, forced to survive on her own, she adapted by turning her home into a boarding house for women who just needed a place to stay. One of those women was her own daughter, Carrie Orlander, who had returned home after a failed marriage. Another was 34-year-old Maggie Hunter, who had recently separated from her 64-year-old husband, J.C. Hunter. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary Savannah household trying to survive financially during a rough, difficult period. But on December 10th, 1909, everything changed. That day, a neighbor named Oscar Smith heard strange groaning sounds coming from inside the Gribble House. Concerned, he went to find a police officer, and together with the officer, they entered the residence. What they discovered inside horrified even seasoned police officers. 70-year-old Eliza Gribble sat slumped over in a chair. Her head had been beaten in so severely that blood covered much of the room. Nearby, Carrie Orlander lay in a hallway inside a massive pool of blood. Her throat had been cut so deeply that her head was barely attached to her body. And Maggie Hunter? Maggie was still alive. Barely. Like Carrie, her throat had been slashed open. She drifted in and out of consciousness as doctors rushed desperately to save her life. Outside in the yard, investigators found a bloody axe that they believed to be the murder weapon. The crime scene stunned Savannah. This wasn't a robbery gone wrong. This wasn't a single murder committed in secrecy. This was a wholesale slaughter carried out in broad daylight inside a boarding house occupied by vulnerable women. Newspapers exploded with sensational coverage almost immediately. Crowds gathered around the property. Rumors spread through Savannah faster than the authorities could control. Then things became even uglier. A neighbor claimed they saw a black man fleeing from the scene around the time of the murders. And that single statement had ignited racial hysteria all over Savannah. Within hours, newspapers amplified the accusation with inflammatory headlines, while local officials offered a $1,000 reward for information that led to the killer's arrest. Armed mobs began roaming the streets. Police rounded up more than 200 African Americans for questioning, while some black residents reportedly sought protection from vigilantes, terrified they were going to be lynched. It was chaos. And as Savannah spiraled into paranoia, Maggie Hunter lay dying. And during her final hours, Reverend John Wilder remained by her bedside. At one point, Wilder reportedly overheard Maggie mutter that her husband, J.C. Hunter, had slapped her. That statement changed the entire direction of the investigation. J.C. Hunter was an aging Confederate veteran, roughly 30 years older than Maggie. Police quickly focused their attention on him. He was brought in for questioning, and he came in later that same evening. But investigators in 1909 often relied on methods that sound almost insane by modern standards. Authorities decided to psychologically break Hunter by confronting him with his dead wife's body without warning him she had died. After midnight, officers escorted Hunter to Maggie's sister's home, where her corpse lay in a dimly lit room. Investigators at the time believed killers would often confess if emotionally overwhelmed by seeing their victim. Imagine that scene. A grieving old man led silently into a dark room, the body of his wife resting inside. Police standing nearby watching every twitch of his face. Hunter reportedly appeared confused at first. Then he began sobbing uncontrollably. When officers asked whether he wanted to kiss Maggie goodbye, he nodded and leaned forward over the body. His voice cracked as he asked, "When did she die?" But despite the emotional breakdown, Hunter never confessed. Another suspect soon emerged. A man named William Walls, rumored to have been romantically involved with Maggie Hunter, was also brought in and shown her corpse. Unlike Hunter, Walls remained calm and described Maggie merely as a quote-unquote good friend. Neither man admitted to anything. And despite the police theatrics, investigators still lacked real evidence. At first, J.C. Hunter seemed likely to walk free after co-workers confirmed he had been at work the whole time the murders took place. But then investigators searched his home and claimed they discovered bloody rags and clothing hidden inside his fireplace. Hunter was arrested again. Yet even then, police, they still weren't sure. Another man entered the picture, Bingham Bryan, a local handyman who had occasionally worked around the Gribble House. Authorities suspected Bryan might know more than he let on. But rather than relying on forensic evidence, detectives decided to stage one of the strangest interrogations in American criminal history. The deputy sheriff borrowed 3 wax mannequins from a department store. The figures were dressed in clothing resembling what the victims wore during the murders. Investigators smeared them with fake blood to recreate injuries suffered by Eliza Gribble, Carrie Orlander, and Maggie Hunter. Then they placed the wax figures beside 3 coffins. Blankets covered the windows to darken the room completely. And somehow, it got even stranger. Police hired a local man to pretend to be a ghost. Late one night, officers escorted Brian into the Gribble House. Under the beam of a flashlight, investigators dramatically illuminated the face of one wax figure and announced, "This is the last woman you killed." Brian reportedly showed no emotion. He had no reaction. One by one, the officers repeated the performance with the other fake corpses. Then the hired ghost approached Brian in the darkness, brushing against him while pretending to sense supernatural guilt. Still, nothing. Finally, the fake ghost declared, "He is not the one who killed Mrs. Gribble." Brian allegedly looked at investigators calmly and said, "You can't do anything with me. No one saw me do it." Despite the bizarre interrogation, Brian was eventually released without charges. But authorities continued building their case against J.C. Hunter. In February 1910, a grand jury indicted Hunter along 2 alleged accomplices. Though the suspects were later released, Hunter alone stood trial. In June of 1911, he was convicted and sentenced to death by hanging. And then came another strange twist. On the eve of Hunter's execution, Reverend John Wilder, the same minister who comforted Maggie as she died, he baptized Hunter in prison. But behind the scenes, Reverend Wilder became convinced Hunter was innocent. The minister reportedly lobbied judges and government officials tirelessly, believing authorities had convicted the wrong man. His efforts worked. At the last possible moment, Hunter's death sentence was commuted to life in prison. Then, 12 years later, Georgia Governor Thomas Hardwick pardoned him entirely. Hunter returned to Savannah and maintained his innocence until the day he died. Which leaves the obvious question. If J.C. Hunter didn't commit the murders, who did? And that mystery only deepened with time. According to reports, Maggie Hunter had told an insurance salesman shortly before her death that she didn't expect to survive the weekend. She asked questions about insurance policies that paid benefits in the event of her murder. Well, then in 1917, years after the trial, a man named J.B. Garvin allegedly confessed to the murders while speaking to a Savannah police officer in New Mexico. Garvin reportedly described details of the Gribble House and stolen items with disturbing accuracy, even claiming he had an accomplice. But authorities dismissed him as just being insane. And just like that, the confession, it disappeared. It just went away. No one truly knows whether Savannah ever caught the real killer. But the story didn't end there, because eventually, the Gribble House itself developed a terrible, terrifying reputation. After the murder, the home continued operating as a boarding house for years. Residents began claiming strange things happened inside. Some reportedly saw bloodstains appearing and disappearing on the walls without explanation. But in 1941, the original Gribble House, it was torn down, it was demolished. And 3 years later, a warehouse was built on the property. And almost immediately, workers inside the warehouse began reporting bizarre activity. Disembodied voices, footsteps echoing through empty rooms, apparitions, strange sensations of being watched. Over time, paranormal investigators flocked to the site. Some claimed to have captured eerie photographs or unexplained phenomena during investigations. And whether those experiences were supernatural or simply the product of a location's horrifying history, it depends on who you ask, I suppose. But honestly, places like the Gribble House, they almost become haunted automatically. Once violence that brutal happens somewhere, the story itself embeds into the location forever. People walk in already expecting to feel something. And Savannah, more than almost any city in America, understands how memory and tragedy can linger. That's part of why the Gribble House murder still fascinates people today. The crime contains nearly every element imaginable. Brutal violence, a possible wrongful conviction, false confessions, racial hysteria, psychological torture by police, and deathbed accusations, ghost stories, and a mystery that may never really truly be solved. Even among Savannah's endless catalog of haunted tales, the Gribble House stands apart because the horror wasn't just paranormal folklore. It was real. 3 women were butchered inside that house. A city nearly tore itself apart. And more than a century later, people still argue over whether justice was ever served at all. So if you enjoyed this episode, check out my book, Southern Ghost Stories, Savannah, where I dive deeper into the haunted history, forgotten tragedies, grave robbing, and eerie legends from all over Savannah. Now, I've been down there. I've been to Savannah half a dozen times, and there are so many historic sites like the Sorrel Wheat House and the 1790 Inn where ghosts just lurk around every corner. Go check out Southern Ghost Stories Savannah. It's over on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, too. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read it for free. Like I said, so many good ghost stories in Savannah. And speaking of books, make sure you head over to Amazon and pick up my latest one, Pistols at Red River, the Andrew Jackson Doolan story. Nothing more fun than dudes dressing up in suits and going to shoot each other in a field. And I teased it a little while ago, but there is a new book dropping in September. I'm really excited about it. I'll go into more detail probably next week on that. But yeah, it's going to be wild. And hey, we're trying to reach 150 Apple Podcast reviews for Halloween. Trying to get to 100 on Spotify. So if you've enjoyed the show, take 2 minutes to leave us a review. I mean, they really help people discover the podcast. Apple, they use ratings and reviews to decide which shows to recommend. And a quick review helps other people find the show. People who love folklore and haunted history, they should come check us out. So please leave a review. And have you guys been to Monster City Madhouse yet? The new shirt's a lot of fun. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. So the Bride of Frankenstein has spoken. And honestly, she may have a point. The new Mini Monsters tee throws together a chaotic crew of pint-sized creatures, creepy cuteness, and vintage Halloween cartoon vibes into one gloriously weird design, featuring tiny vampires, little mummies, swampy troublemakers, and one very unimpressed bride rocking the legendary line, "Boys are gross." Told you guys before, I'll tell you again, I'm not sure about that one. I don't think I'm gross anyway. Anyway, you can use promo code SAVE10 to get 10% off your order. That's right, go to MonsterCityMadhouse.com, type in promo code SAVE10, 10% right off the top comes off your order. Be sure to support my buddy Ben who owns the store. Great guy. And you'll see me and him in July in Knoxville. July 31st to August 2nd, I'll be at CreepyCon. MonsterCityMadhouse.com will be at CreepyCon. I'll be signing books, telling ghost stories. So yeah, make plans to come to Knoxville into this month. It's going to be a really good time. Be sure to like Southern Ghost Stories on Facebook and Instagram. And send us more questions on our socials for future Q&A episodes. And speaking of a Q&A episode, I told you guys it was coming. Well, it's here. Friday, the Q&A episode will drop. You can send me more questions on the Facebook and Instagram for Southern Ghost Stories. Also got an email, southernghoststories@gmail.com. If you want to drop a comment, send me a question. So, yeah, I look forward to that, and I'll see you guys Friday. See you then. If you love ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, and everything that goes bump in the night, then mark your calendars for the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo, happening September 26 in Mayfield, Kentucky at the Mayfield Graves County Fairgrounds. This incredible one-day event brings together some of the biggest names in the paranormal community, including Aaron G. Thompson from Netflix's 28 Days Haunted, Jimmy and Jeffrey from Outlaw Paranormal, The Wyndham Bros, Josh Morris, Michael Huntington, Rachel Ravensville, and many, many more special guests and speakers. Your admission is just $15, and that gets you an all-day come-and-go wristband so you can explore at your own pace. Browse more than 35 vendors, enjoy delicious food trucks, attend speaker presentations and panels, meet investigators, hear incredible stories, and dive into the worlds of hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and the unexplained. Whether you're a seasoned ghost hunter or just curious about the mysteries that surround us, there's something for everyone at the West Kentucky Paranormal Expo. Tickets are on sale now. For more information, visit West Kentucky Paranormal Expo on Facebook and get ready for one of the most exciting paranormal events of the year. We'll see you in Mayfield on September 26th. Monster City Madhouse, a year-round online store full of Halloween and classic horror shirts with an emphasis on the vintage look. Use code SAVE10 for 10% off your order. MonsterCityMadhouse.com. Free shipping and financing is available.